I'm Bambi Francisco for this segment of Lessons for Entrepreneurs, and I'm speaking with Scott Painter. He is the founder of Zag. Scott, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You started CarsDirect back in 1998, and you started Zag in '05.
Correct.
Two not similar, but almost similar missions. Two companies trying to sell cars online or help consumers get better deals. How has the car industry online changed in the last 10 years?
Well, I'm definitely on a mission. I do believe that buying a car is one of the most time-consuming, frustrating tasks that we all share, and everybody has a bad car buying story. I think that the introduction of technology and transparency into the process is all about making car buying better, and it turns out it's about making car selling more efficient as well. So I do think that there's two sides to that equation. I think the introduction of CarsDirect and what we did in '98, '99 was really usher in upfront pricing and the possibility that you could get information that would help you in the negotiation of a car other than from the dealer. And so that really introduced, I think, a fundamental shift in consumer behavior in terms of how they shop. And you know, in '98, '99, 5–10% of people were going online, whereas today just about everybody who shops for a new car goes online first. They get really informed, very educated, and then they go into the dealership. Well, that has a profound change on the conversation that goes on at the dealership. And so I guess what I would say is that auto retail is changing quickly. The last 10 years have probably been the most dynamic decade for auto retail. It's very hard for a dealer to sort of stay on top of all of that evolution. You also saw really the introduction of publicly traded dealerships about 20 years ago, and so you've seen a certain percentage of dealers that are hyper-sophisticated by comparison to the single-point sort of family-owned legacy dealership. And of the 43,000 dealers, only about 10% are publicly traded. But that's the Wayne Huizingas and the Roger Penske's of the world. And they bring the Harvard degree and the sort of very disciplined business sensibility to running a dealership. And I think that in the long run, selling cars, new cars especially, is really a commodity business, and it is about volume, and it is about efficiency, and it is about making sure that you control your costs. And I think the online automotive relationship that dealerships have with the companies like ours is absolutely core to their ability to grow, because that's where the customers are.
Now, you have changed your model with CarsDirect. I think you said earlier that you actually sold cars. You actually delivered cars.
That's correct.
Not a model that actually worked. I remember a number of retailers who had that model.
I believe it worked, by the way. I think the original mission at CarsDirect, which was pretty combative, I mean, it was really very much a way to build a brand very quickly, was we're an alternative to the dealer. And I think everybody had so much immediate recognition that the dealer equaled pain that they wanted a pressure release valve. And so CarsDirect, that was the original mission. We built the brand around that. And I think that the world changed in 2000 when really technology went through its own downturn, and companies of all kinds, and CarsDirect included, had to make really important decisions about where do you spend your money, how do you grow the business. And so CarsDirect shifted away from that mission and really focused on the discipline of making money, which I think, in retrospect, it had to do. And it focused on advertising and lead generation. Fundamentally, I have a problem with lead generation as the business has shifted, because lead generation doesn't improve the customer experience. In the end, if you think about what you don't like about buying a car, it's the salesman. It's about not knowing the price. And the whole premise of lead generation is give me your name, and I'll have a dealer call you with a price. And unfortunately, it's 5 dealers, and they're calling you at home during dinner time, and that's the very person you wanted to avoid in the first place. Why not just give you the price? So I think as the market has shifted towards transparency and towards commoditization and towards upfront price, the fundamental value proposition of lead gen is diminished. It's a multi-billion-dollar category. There's a lot of big players in it. CarsDirect, my former company, is one of them. And I think that they have to very much examine what is happening in online automotive and how that's evolving, and I think that we're sort of at the forefront of that.
What have you learned from your experience at CarsDirect, and how are you applying it to Zag?
Well, so this is my 28th company. I think that every mistake I've ever made in every company, I hope not to make again, and I think that I probably, at this point in Zag, every lesson that I learned at CarsDirect is being applied every day at Zag, and so we avoid whatever we can in terms of mistakes. There was also a lot that we did right at CarsDirect. So I think that there's a lot of lessons that we also look back on and say, okay, well, how do we emulate that, or how do we replicate that success? But I'd say, in general, startups and even well-run startups make more mistakes than successes, and you just have to make sure you don't do them twice.
One mistake, one lesson.
One mistake, one lesson.
I'm going to ask you for 3.
Yeah. So I would say probably the biggest regret or mistake is that we didn't foresee the change in the technology landscape really affecting everything the way it did in 2000. And as a result, we were not set up properly. We were spending money to generate market share and building a brand. And luckily, we did it when we could raise a lot of money. We had to very quickly shift. As I turned over the company to Bob Briscoe, great CEO, great decisions. I mean, he went to a very disciplined, rigored approach of really, let's focus on revenue.
So now you're more disciplined, you're focused on revenue.
You can't not be at this point. I mean, so the capital's just not there. So even though we just raised a bunch of money, and we've raised a lot of money for Zag, I think it reflects the fact that the business is the real deal. It's, I mean, we are at the forefront.
$100 million altogether that you've raised for
$100 million in debt and equity.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your lessons.
You bet.
I've been speaking with Scott Painter. He's the founder of Zag. I'm Bambi Francisco.